Here we go, man. This had to be done. I feel like I had to be the one that does it because this is what this brand is about. It's about celebrating the essence of the game, celebrating the art and the intricacies and the nuances of the game, and really dissecting it, and going in depth on it. You're right. And going beyond the surface level stuff like the narratives and the stats, because this level that I speak on daily and have the privilege of speaking on, thanks to you guys, and it's a one in a million place, man. Like these guys that I'm about to name, these 75 that I'm about to name, man, these guys are once in a generation type guys from their city, from their community, and things like that. Everyone just gets lost nowadays in discussions about who's this and who's that. At the end of the day, these guys are all monsters, and the gap, truth be told, isn't that big between everyone here. This list, I want to say first and foremost, I have no problem. Well, I have four problems. I have Dwight Howard, Kyrie Irving, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady were my problems with the NBA's all-time list. But the NBA's all-time list, you got to understand, that's a celebration of its history, of its rich history, and paying homage to its pioneers, paying homage to the guys that paved the way. And those guys that came before the guys that I'm about to name were crucial, right? The pioneers, the Jerry Wests, the Elgin Baylors, the Wes Unseld, the Oscar Robertsons. There's just so many guys that aren't going to be on my list, because they were from a different time. Because the game evolved, the game got better, the game got more athletic, the game got faster, the game got stronger, the game got bigger, the game got more sophisticated in the way that it was played offensively, in the way that it's been played defensively. We're in an age now of just straight up monsters, and we've been in this age from the 80s, 90s on, 2000s especially. I think the real talent boom in the NBA took place after 1996, after 1995, and I'll tell you why. What we saw the OGs do in that time period when they came in, the game was still exiting its infancy, but the game of basketball wasn't nearly as big then, and the game wasn't being marketed the way it was, and this thing isn't discussed enough, but the moment you had this game marketed to the inner cities of the United States, to overseas and Europe and South America and places like that, it blew up. It went to new heights. Especially the inner cities, because you ended up now. That's where the evolution really happened. The evolution was because of the Dr. J's, and because the Isaiah Thomases and the Michael Jordans, and before them there were so many other guys too. But that's when this game really became super cool and everyone wanted to be a part of it. You had guys in the inner cities, like basketball became their way out. Basketball became their way out for their family, how to make it out of the trenches. They had to eat, sleep, and breathe the game. These guys were, genetically gifted, freaks of nature, and then basketball became their life. Basketball became their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Always on courts, always playing outdoors. Working on their skills and just playing and hooping every day and getting more athletic through the training. And that's happened, right? There's been such a explosion of talent, of athleticism, of skill to this day, and it continues to grow and get better. You see it in the league today, right? So people may say, hey, this is disrespectful. You left those guys off. No, look, the NBA celebrated that. And that's what the NBA's list was. It was the greatest careers that they celebrated. Greatness is different from ability. It's a whole different conversation. You're looking at what someone achieved. You're looking at what someone's stats were. You're looking at what time someone's impact were in their specific time. Ability, it's not constant like that. You need context. Who did you do this against? Who was your competition? What type of athletes were you playing against? What age did you come in? What was your peers like when you came out? The NBA now is so damn hard to make, and it's been that way from like the 90s on, especially. It's been a league that is just 12 spots per team, 450 spots. I've seen guys that were five-star prospects. I've seen guys that were overseas legends. I've seen guys firsthand that were, a moment away. They had this window and it shut and it didn't come. And these guys were more than capable of being stars on this level. It is a very, very hard level to make. That's why it's important to respect the game. I think it's almost disrespectful to, oh, he shouldn't be on this list. He didn't achieve this and that. Well, it's not fair to him. You're going to say it's not fair to the older guys and the pioneers. They never had this technology and all these things. And they couldn't, they just did what they did in their time and they stood out. Well, that's why they got their moment. Everyone celebrates them. Everyone understands who they are. They get their recognition, because as far as greatness goes, they got their due. it's right here where you talk about ability in game. Who are the 75 best to ever step foot on a basketball court? The conversation changes because it becomes about skill. It becomes about athleticism. It becomes about, you take evolution into account. You take into account your competition and how hard was it to make it in that time period. And, what did you have to do to become the player you were, Um, just to see the performance that these guys have now and see the performers that we've been seeing from the 90s on, 80s on, it's been ridiculous, man. So we're going to get this started, man. I got 25, and then we got 26 to 55, and then the final 25. That's who I'm going to kick it off with. These guys are the guys that this was really hard. This was the tricky part. Who are the final 20? The first 50, I will say it was pretty easy for me. I'm going by eye test. I'm going by skill. I'm going by ability first and foremost. Resume matters. Stats matters. And longevity matters, of course. Impact, obviously, but like a lot of those things, team success, situational. Um, a lot of those accolades are very situational accolades. There's guys that would have been all NBA repeatedly, but the thing is, they weren't in a certain time period, they weren't allowed to move around and go on winning teams and adjust their situation like that. So they just never got those all NBA nods because they were just in losing situations, right? And they never had control of the roster like guys do now. But outstanding talents, when you look at this list at the end of it, we may not agree. There may be certain names that you would have left on or off or whatever, but you will be looking at a list of pure talent in this advanced stage of basketball, just nasty talents, right? And to the pioneers, man, much respect to them. But it's unfair to today's guys to say that, a Jerry West is better than a modern day freak of nature, or a Elgin Baylor is better than a modern day skilled, trains 3 times a day, takes care of his nutrition, has a chef monitoring every single nutrient that goes in his body, in the weight room, on the court, with a trainer, studying film, rehab, recovery, all those things. And then, had to be 1 in a million to make it out of where he came from. And then had to be 1 in a million to make it out of college and 1 in a million to make it to the league in his age, ultra competitive age. We've been in just like this explosion of talent from every position. The guards evolved from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You had the street ball boom, you had the athleticism, you had the plyometrics, you had the strength training, everything blew up. And these guys are all a product of that I'm going to name. These guys, point guards and shooting guards and wings, we went to new heights, man. Today's player is bigger, stronger, faster, more skilled, more polished. But the biggest thing is he's playing in a more sophisticated time, offensively, defensively, and much more, 100 times more competitive time. There's no more, these guys didn't have the luxury of playing in an era where guys in the summer have 2 jobs, where guys in the summer aren't even training, where guys in the summer aren't even, playing basketball, like they're working their second job. They didn't have the advantages of, hey, if I stay clean, a lot of guys in the league are doing hard drugs. I'm going to be highly respected. They didn't have the luxury of, hey, if I'm the best player in my city, I'm the best player in my state, I'm guaranteed to be a big time star in the NBA. That's how it was for a lot of those a lot of those pioneers and OGs. It ain't like that no more, man. This shit, you got to grind and crawl and really be lucky to get to this level just to get a look and get a moment here. So these guys, I'm kicking off, man. All eye test, ability and talent. Think about their game, and then we'll bring all the other stuff into it because that stuff matters too. And it got a lot of these guys in it, but I got to look at what era did this happen in? Who were you going up against? And, there's got to be context to it. I'm not going to be excited about someone that achieved this amount of stats and accolades in a time period where it was easier to do it and he didn't have that competition. Number one, first name, I want to kick this off. Absolute talent, Brandon Roy, one of the most polished guards of his time. He got injured. It was hard putting him on this list because he got hurt. He had a 3-year run. He was a 3-time All-Star, though, and he was taken off. His game was very, very mature for his age and experience level. When he came out of UW, just took the league by storm, Rookie of the Year. And you had a guy that was, just ridiculously polished, a 3-level scorer. A guy that was flawless. You saw what Kobe said about him, and that's everything you need to know. That's a guy that's the best in the world to me, the best ever to me. Look at what he said about Brandon Roy, and that's all you got to know about Brandon Roy, period. That dude is that version of Brandon Roy's one of the 75 best to ever step on a basketball court. And you put him in any era previous, he just gets better and better and ranks higher. But to him doing what he did in that era with the Kobe's and T-Macs and D-Wades and LeBrons and Carmelos, It's ridiculous. He stood out and he shined right away, and it was because of his arsenal and his skill set. Name number 2 right now. Again, these are not in order. None of these are in order. I'm just naming 25, 25, and 25. They're grouped in the final 25, the 26 to 55, and the top 25. Number 2, I want to kick it off. Lamarcus Aldridge. Lamarcus Aldridge had one hell of a career, a long career, 20,000 points. But Lamarcus Aldridge was highly skilled. Lamarcus Aldridge put up, great numbers, and then on top of that, his skill level in the mid-range to do what he does on the low block, just his passing ability and his IQ. And he was great with Dame. He was great with so many guys, great with Brandon Roy, great with Dame, great with Kawhi, great with Duncan, great with, the Spurs when he was there. And now he's being still to this day great with, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and James Harden and those guys. That's a timeless skill set, man. That's a guy that really, the power forward position, there's a lot of these power forwards I'm about to name. They came in the golden age of power forwards, man, when it was very, very competitive. The position was at its best. Just making the league at that position was tough, let alone shining in this league in this age. Incredible, man. That's a top 75 that I've ever seen step foot on the court. And I think in any previous era, he'd get better and better at that position. Next one, we got John Wall. John Wall's speed, athleticism, and burst paired with his skill level is freakish stuff. You want to see the evolution of the game? Go look at the 50s, 60s, 70s guards. Look how they move, and then go watch John Wall. It doesn't look human. You would think that it's a sped-up film. Just go watch John Wall in high school. That's how far we've come. That John Wall in high school, you throw him in the 60s, 70s, 80s, yeah, you could say this is impossible, but I'm just saying it ain't fair, right? I guess it's not, because you put that guy in any era previously, he's a machine. He'd be, looked at as the greatest human ever. Had a great run so far in the NBA. I think he'll continue. All-star, all-NBA, all-defensive guy, a guard that really shined, at the start of that decade. And, when it's all said and done, I think John Wall has a borderline Hall of Fame career. But more than anything, from an eye test standpoint, you're looking at a freak of nature that had skills and playmaking ability and defensive ability. He was going at the best of the best at his position every night. You gotta honor that. Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol was coming out of Europe. He's a part of this evolution too. The evolution of the big, the evolution of the European player, the skill level that he had, the smarts that he had, his ability to pass the ball, shoot the ball, and really be effective within an offense. You saw what he did in the triangle. Pau Gasol really blew me away when, he shook off that soft label, because look who he conquered it against Kevin Garnett. Think about it, the biggest dog at that position, arguably, played in the finals, played with Kobe, played with a guy that, I consider the best to ever do it, and shined with him and helped him win 2 rings. They don't have that without him, right? He just retired. One hell of a talent, advanced talent, came in an age, in the golden age of power forwards, man. Competitive position, athletic position, physical position, and Pau Gasol always held his own, and Pau Gasol was an NBA champion because of his skill level. Yao Ming came in at 7'6", and people question him. People question who he would be. His career ended abruptly, so he slept on. But Yao Ming, when he was Yao Ming, it was crazy, because he was able to do everything, and he was able to do it comfortably. He was just a skilled player. He was a guy that could see over the defense at that size, but pass the ball. He had that fade, the turnaround, and he was just such a good player in terms of in the pick and roll. He was very versatile. He could kind of play in any era, I felt like, at that position. He could walk in today, all-star multiple times, and, put up great numbers, had the success that he did with that Rockets team. And, it sucks that it ended abruptly, but Yao Ming's a legend, and Yao Ming's a legend in his country, and Yao Ming pushed the game forward. I don't think we're going to see a 7'6" guy do those things like that. This one right here, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler kicks this off for the Wings, because like Brandon Roy, Jimmy Butler is when I see Jimmy Butler, the player, I see a guy that he is the evolution of the wing position, right? From what we saw the David Thompsons do, from what we saw the Elgin Baylors do, what we saw Alex English's do. Everything is just, if you want to watch, just go watch a Jimmy Butler clip and watch a clip from then. Watch how sharp the cuts are. Watch how quick the cuts are. Watch how quick the release is. Watch how strong the sweep is to the cup. Watch how physical he is at the rim. Watch how guys bump off of him. Watch how guys that are other freakishly athletic guys that are working on their body 3-4 days a week, 5 days a week, doing all the things that he does. Watch how they, bounce off him and can't guard him. And then when you can make the shots, more than anything, also defend. And but the way he did it in the advanced stage he's done it in, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. You put this guy in previous eras, I think his stock and his status in the league goes up because that size, that skill level, and that physicality and athleticism, man, that's freakish level stuff. Don't get it twisted. That right there is one in a million type stuff. Jimmy Butler could go to any open run in the country, put up 90 on your local pros if you really wanted to. All-time freakish talent, could put up 40, put up 50, had a great run, all NBA, all-star, took a team to the finals. But eye test wise, if I look at Jimmy Butler, that is a very, very advanced wing, much like Brandon Roy. It doesn't get much more better than these guys. Like it'll be a couple, well, not a couple, but a few dozen maybe wings that are ahead of him. That means a lot. Next guy I got right here is Darren Williams, another guy that at that point guard position, we've never seen a guy that was that much of a bully with that type of skill set, with that type of shot making, off the catch, off the dribble, moving without the ball. He was a guy that had that nasty quick cross, had that crazy handle, tight handle, and but really quick with it, and then he'd bump you. And again, a guy that dominated in an age of great guards. Him and Chris Paul were at the top of the game at one point as the two best point guards in the game, and the game was really very, it was a tough era of basketball, tough era defensively, stacked with guards, stacked with talent, and Darren Williams always took his teams deep. Again, another guy that had a short run, so you may question why he's on here. But, man, the eye test at his peak, I know what I saw, and I think a lot of his peers know what he saw. You put this guy in any previous era, he is cooking. He's eating. You could keep saying that, hey, it's not fair to throw him in another era. Well, then it's not fair to say that those guys from that era are better basketball players than these guys, because they're not. They just aren't. These guys are just the evolution of the game. They took what they did and multiplied it by 10. Physically, skillfully, and just competition-wise, it's on another level, man. Again, monster talents that I'm naming, by the way, monster talents that if you mention their name and their city or the school that they came from, people are just nodding their head and just saying it was unreal, Chris Bosh, the next guy that I got on here, is at that power forward position, man. Imagine Chris Bosh in today's game. He was slept on a little bit after the Heat years because he sacrificed. But what Chris Bosh was at that position, he was like a product of Garnett, product of those guys, Chris Webber as a lefty, and to be able to step it out, shoot the ball, play in the pick and roll and pick and pop and things like that. Do it so comfortably, put up 24 and 10 at his peak, sacrificed his role, and really won championships with the Heat and again, that was a high level of basketball that Chris Bosh was shining in elite time in the league. And I'll never forget Chris Bosh the year, man. It hurt because the year he got blood clots, he looked like the best power forward in the game again. When LeBron had just went back to Cleveland, it was him and D Wade. He was cooking. Go look at the numbers. Go look at the eye test. Go look at the ability. Chris Bosh in today's day will be a fucking problem, man. He would fit in so beautifully and so naturally. Next guy I got on here is Alonzo Mourning. Alonzo Mourning in the 90s, in the golden age of centers, was a very physical, very skilled player. On the low block, the game was played inside out that time. He always made teams better on both ends, defensively, offensively. And, him being able to do things and be an enforcer down low, him being able to back guys down and punish guys and then have that soft scoring touch around the rim, and those little banks. He was a true traditional big, but his resume was dominant. His stats were dominant, and he made teams better. I was so happy when he won that ring in 2006 and completed the puzzle. Alonzo Mourning did it all. Alonzo Mourning was one of the most respected bigs in the golden age of bigs, centers. Next one I got right here is Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway had so much talent that, he should be in this next group of the 26 to 51, possibly 25. Penny Hardaway, out of this world, another guy, evolution of the game at 6'7", a point guard that was moving around. Like, they're looking for a Penny Hardaway now, right? The Lucas are like, that's Penny Hardaway's now. And think about how valuable that is. But that time when he came in, we hadn't seen a 6'7". It was like Magic, but a little more, Magic with a little more athleticism, Magic with a little bit more, flair and just a swagger. And in the 90s, all the 90s, all the 80s babies, they tell you all the time, Penny was our favorite player because Penny had that flair that could rival MJ. He had that swagger that could rival MJ. But his talent level with his passing, with his shot making, with his ball handling ability, that he could run the floor and control the offense, it was just beautiful to watch, man. And all-time talent. I'm so happy he's coaching now and giving back to the game. He didn't ultimately, because the injuries, he didn't get to the level that he could have got to. and rehab and things like that weren't up to par yet. But Penny Hardaway in those years that he came in, man, it was incredible to watch, and it is one of the best talents that ever stepped foot on a basketball court in the '90s and all time. A key part of this evolution of the game of basketball. Next guy I got on here is Dikembe Mutombo. Dikembe Mutombo, again, much like Alonzo Mourning, it was so hard putting him on here, but it was so hard leaving him off. He didn't put up points like that, but man, defensively speaking, you're looking at a guy that had the job of guarding the best centers when the center position was at its peak, and that means a lot to me, because he was a force down low defensively, and he made teams better wherever he went as well. Look up the numbers and resume. That's what really got him in. But I do understand who Dikembe was as a rim protector when rim protectors were very, very important. Next guy we got on here, Tony Parker, the greatest French basketball player of all time, a four-time NBA MVP, a four-time NBA champ, Finals MVP, did it all, led a dynasty, was the point guard for a dynasty, got the situation, made the situation better. Tony Parker was lightning quick. Tony Parker in the lane had this teardrop, had the spin move, and he was very unguardable, very crafty. And, at the highest level of basketball, always shined. Tony Parker is an all-time talent and doesn't get the respect he deserves to this day. But hopefully this gives it to him a little bit. Next name I got on here is Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen, many of you may, think, hey, why is he ranked so low? Scottie Pippen to me, right now he's trying to sell books and shit, so he's saying stuff. But Scottie Pippen was great. He was the perfect second guy for the greatest basketball player of all time defensively, in terms of initiating an offense, in terms of, playing defense at the rim, playing defense on the wing, and just, being a guy that was a great all-around player. But I just can't put Scottie over lead wings. I can't put Scottie over this next group of lead wings who had defenses designed to stop him, and defenses still couldn't stop him. Scottie wasn't like that. He was the perfect second guy, and he made a great situation successful, and he made it, he brought a lot of glory there. But Scottie Pippen, I think he belongs in this group right here. Jermaine O'Neal is a beast at the power forward position. Defensively speaking, offensively speaking, he had this beautiful turnaround. He could step it out a bit. Again, an evolution of the power forward position. He had this just high release arc jumper, but it was so hard to block, and it would always go in. He had nice footwork on the block and put up great numbers. In a monster age of power forwards and advanced age of athletes. Was an all-star every single, perennial all-star. I think 6-7-time all-star maybe. Defensive player of the year candidate, incredible rim protector. Jermaine was blocking shit. He made people run out the paint, and athletically speaking, skill wise and things like that, competition, advancements in the game. Jermaine's a force, man. You put him in any previous era, they'd be looking at him as the best power forward, I feel like, in the 80s or 70s. Again, another product of that, street game, another product of the evolution of, the inner cities getting basketball and it blowing up and him just taking to the maximum heights. Next guy I got on here is Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller's resume doesn't actually blow me away. The numbers don't either. The 18-3-3 and, all those years, he was still only a 5-time All-Star. There's a lot of guys that I feel like in that position could have done more probably with that type of freedom that he had. But I do know what Reggie did at his peak. He boxed with Mike. He bumped with some of the best. And he was a cold-blooded clutch assassin, So, and who he is as a shooter gets him on here for sure. I was going to give this spot to Bradley Beal, but I couldn't. It was just too long of a run. His longevity is too much. Legend, would be better probably in today's game as a third option, but as a spot-up guy, in the Klay Thompson role. Next guy I got on here is Klay Thompson, actually, because, you're looking at the greatest spot-up shooter probably ever. Did what Reggie did what Peja Stojakovic did, but did it at a high level, at a championship level for a dynasty team, and then defended the Kyries, defended the best of the best on the other end, and that means a lot. Klay is a dog, I think, and Klay's a guy that's a competitor, loves basketball, shined on the brightest stage, and, really maximize who he could be. And I hope to see him come back and continue to do that. But what really got him in for me was the 60s. I'll never forget the 60s. Klay going off for 60 in like 25 minutes on 11 dribbles. I think getting 50 and 60, it's the highest thing in basketball. Like a championship requires a team and all those things. That's kind of out of your control. But when a motherfucker can go on a basketball court and just drop 50 by himself or 60, that means the world. At the NBA level, that means the world to me, straight up. If you're talking individual game, that means everything. Um, Next guy I got on here is Shawn Kemp. Shawn Kemp, again, in that big time era of basketball, where it was physical, where it was brute force and strength. And, he was a guy that really was a part of the evolution again. Shawn Kemp jumping out the gym at that size, at that position. They hadn't seen that before, the way he was tearing the rim down. Larry Johnson, I was about to give Larry Johnson this spot, but I gave it to Shawn Kemp because Shawn Kemp was a little more decorated. Shawn Kemp played in the finals, had a great run with Gary Payton, and those Sonics teams were elite to watch, and Shawn could do a little bit more than just be a dunker, but it's the dunking and the athleticism that really pushed the game forward. And it was the physicality and the way he played above the rim at that size. It was like a football player jumping out the gym. Again, another guy that if you were to show footage of in the 60s and 70s of what was to come because of those guys, like they'd be like blown away. It wouldn't even look human. And then the next guy, I'm going to name next to Shawn Kemp is Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the accomplishments, if you look at the resume as he came in, but more than anything, if you look at the vibe that surrounded Blake Griffin when he came in, when he was the first pick, it was like, yo, this type of athleticism at this position, the way he's moving so fluently as a power forward and the way he can run the floor and handle the ball and step out with it a little bit, but the way he's fucking just punishing the rim and dunking and throwing it down, it was game-changing stuff. That's why he was the number one pick in that stacked draft class. And the game kind of changed on Blake, and then everything kind of changed, But remember, Blake in his years with the Clippers, when the game was still played inside out for the most part, Blake, when he was still, being a power forward and having your offense run through a power forward was important, and playing in the pick and roll with Chris Paul is a monster, and it's a shame those Clippers teams never made it to a finals because I think he would have showcased his ability on that level a lot. But yeah, Blake Griffin, look up the resume, look up the numbers, then do the eye test. You're looking at a fucking freak of nature, and you're looking at a once in a generation type athlete at that position. He kind of reminded me of Shawn Kemp, like a cleaner version of Shawn Kemp, in the way he played the game. Next guy I got on here is one of my favorite players of all time to watch, Steve Francis. Steve Francis was. These guys were like an extension of Isaiah Thomas, who's in my top 25, actually. These guys brought that street element to the game. They brought that, that chip on the shoulder. These are the guys that I'm saying. They got the game in the hood, and they had to make it out of the hood through it with the game, of basketball. And literally, Steve Francis went from the streets to college to the NBA and took the NBA by storm. I hate that he didn't play for our Vancouver Grizzlies, kind of turned his back on us, but fuck, I can't deny the talent, man. It was out of the world. Athleticism at that position. You hadn't seen guards. I'm going to name these next three together. Just makes sense. Let's do it right now, actually. Steve Francis, Stephon Marbury, and Baron Davis are right here in this group for me. And they inspired today's guards in a way. The Dames, the Kyries, the Stephs all looked up to them at a point. Derrick Rose and Kemba Walker, they all looked up to these guys. And obviously Iverson too, but those three guys may not have like multiple all-star selections. That was situational too. Teams weren't that good. They didn't have many pieces around them, but when they did, they were all-stars year after year. And, again, it was more of a big man game then, and they weren't really looked at to play this style then. It was looked down on to play how they wanted to play. The street game, the handles they had, it was just nasty. Coming in the lane, you hadn't seen point guards dunking on guys like that. You had seen the ankle breakers and things like that, but getting in the lane and dunking on cats and, dropping dimes and no-look passes and just the talent that they had, the ability they had, and the physicality they brought and the chip and shoulder that they played with, man, it was phenomenal stuff. And, it was, again, one in a million type stuff. If you mention those names in the cities they're from, those guys look at them as gods of the sport, and to this day in LA, Baron Davis, one of the most respected guys, and look at all the talent that's come out of LA. And they're like humbled by Baron Davis's presence as a player. Steve Francis, same thing. Think about it. Kevin Durant said one of my goals was just to be better than Steve Francis. Coming from where I come from. Stephon Marbury, a legend in New York. It doesn't get much better than that. So those three guys really changed the game, but they had outstanding talent. That's when the guard position really started blowing up, late 90s, and you had these guys that were part of the street boom. You had these guys that were coming from the inner cities. Athleticism was there. They were coming out of the AAU circuit, and it was just like game-changing. Everything you see today with the golden age of guards, thank these guys for it. They really made that shit, cool and nasty and, glamorizing, and you wanted to be it. You wanted to do it. The next guy I got on here, Clyde Drexler. Clyde Drexler was a force, man. In his time period, what he did and what he achieved at that position, man, is phenomenal. And one night at his peak, at his peak years, he was going at it with Michael Jordan, and that means everything. He was a very one of the guys that was pushing the game forward because he had athleticism, he had shooting ability in the mid range, and he could do things in terms of scoring the ball, the finger roll that he had, that nice touch, scoring. Back then was the game was very mid-range driven, and it was just like he had it all: one dribble pull-ups and the baseline jumper, and little turnarounds, and then he could shoot the three ball as well. On top of that, his ability to play above the rim and just be a freak athlete, and then pair that with skill, pair that with his resume, pair that with the stats. He's a lock. I think there's been better wings that came ability wise, but those wings wouldn't exist without Clyde Drexler, what he did for the game. I feel like, and again, boxing with Jordan at your peak, that's no small thing. Next guy I got on here is Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson was a 7-time All-Star. Clutch, put guys on the floor. You go look at Joe Johnson's highlight reel. He made defenders look real foolish. He floored them. He was able to be a closer for great teams, and he was a guy that really at his position in his time period was playing the game similar to like a James Harden. It was just wasn't a lot of these guys I'm naming, man. The everyday casual that's going to look by stats and resumes is going to be confused. But you got to understand the era these guys played in. It wasn't like how it is now. They weren't allowed to just run and gun and chuck and do whatever and have the ultimate freedom. They kind of had to break out of it, earn that trust, get the green light barely, and then do it. And even then, it was still kind of looked down on it. And, they were disrespected. So Joe Johnson's a lock. The next guy I got on here, ability-wise, Joe Johnson, the eye test was just nasty. Speaking of nasty, and I gotta honor nasty, but I'm also saying these guys had resumes. Jamal Crawford, he makes it. Jamal Crawford, again, if you look at who he was, and I gotta explain these ones because like people are gonna be like, why? But because the resume and the stats don't jump out, but the eye test was just ridiculous. If you mention this guy's name to hoopers, they don't have any words for it because Jamal Crawford at his peak coming off the bench gave D Wade and the Heat 52. Jamal Crawford at his peak was going at it with a Kobe on any given night. Jamal Crawford at his peak was going at it with Allen Iverson and, going toe to toe with a Kevin Durant. You would, if you were to show basketball to someone for the first time and they watch Jamal Crawford on the night he got the green light and got to play his game, they think he's a superstar in the league. And look, he got hit with the 6-man label and his career changed. It took a turn. Jamal Crawford, when he came in, another guy that had that street element to his game, all this talent as a 6'5" point guard, but it wasn't looked down to, you go run and gun and chuck and be this creator. It was looked down on. The game was still played inside out, so they weren't even allowed to play like that. And he kind of did, and he was a rebel in a way in the way he played. And, sometimes it knocked him in a bad way. It maybe created a bad perception for the managers at the time or maybe coaches, because he was doing things like he was an outstanding talent, but he was held back. He never got that franchise tag. And then he became a 6-man. But once he figured out the 6-man thing, I think he's truly the greatest 6-man ever because Manu wasn't a full-time 6-man. And then this guy right here made every team better. Atlanta, the Clippers, because of his ability to do things off the bench. On any given night, he looked like a superstar, right? And you pair that with the fact that, there's guys in the top 25, Jamal Crawford shook them, gave them buckets, made their knees buckle, and then just put 40 or 50 on them off the bench. And then you look at the resume is real, 3 6-man of the year, nearly 20,000 career points. If you do include the playoffs as 20,000, had a 20-year run, had 50 points on 4 different teams, had 51 in his last full game. Oldest player ever to do such a thing. That's a representation of just being a purist and being a master of your craft. Playmaking was out the world. Handle was out the world. Top 5 handle ever. Shot making, mid-range, and all those things, and a guy that, 6th all time and 3-pointers made, man, like, come on. And then you put up the numbers that he put up at his peak years. They were great numbers in that time period. Imagine what he would have done with a green light if he was a franchise guy, if he was the lead guy, if he was given that freedom to play every night. Jamal Crawford coming out of college, playing this game right now, he would have been perceived similar to like a LaMelo Ball with the talent he has at that size. It would have been crazy, but he was just in the wrong era. And then he got a certain label, but he still managed to make a 20-year career out of it. Huge success. Eye test out the world. Nasty talent. Next one I got on here, DeMar DeRozan, another guy. When I look at him, the evolution of the wing position, taller, stronger, faster, jumps out the gym, and then all the skills in the world. They were able to take what the Clydes did and the Jordans did and implement it into their game. They came from where they came from and, had this street element, played with the chip on their shoulder, had these incredible high school legendary mixtapes, and we're just playing in an era where it was so competitive at that wing position, man, so hard to make it. And they made it. They made that shit, and they dominated. They did their thing night after night, and to this day, if you look at his resume, if you look at his stats and what he's done and who he is as an individual talent, it's incredible stuff, man. So you got to honor that. Again, looking at him, I see an advanced talent, an advanced wing. Last guy on here, he's not the last guy on the list. He's just on this list, though. Very important to have him on here. Manu Ginobili, another guy, lefty, came from Argentina. So skilled, so acrobatic, so unique in the way he played the game. Out of the world, and in that great situation that he was in, fucking maximized it, made it better than what it was, became the Spurs go-to guy in the Olympics, put on a legendary performance with Argentina in '04 in Athens. The skills he had, the acrobatic ability, the body control, the showmanship that he had some things that Kyrie has. He has some things that a James Harden has. He had that talent. You never got to see him be the lead guy then. On some nights he was the third guy, some nights second guy. But in this era right now, Manu Ginobili, you put that Manu Ginobili in today's game, with this freedom and this spacing, and say, go play your game, he'd be looked at as one of the best guards in the sport, and an absolute legend, an absolute talent, and one of the best we've ever seen, one of the best shooting guards we've ever seen playing the game. Again, you won't be able to look strictly at the numbers. The championships are there. You got to go really watch this guy's game. He was a master of his craft. So that concludes the top 20, the first 25. Now we're going to go on to the next. These ones I don't got to explain as much. It's just, you get it. Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is right here in this group for me. Generational ability, generational talent, mobility that he has, athleticism he has. I think, if you look at the only knock I have on him, and it's not his fault, is that he didn't play in the golden age of power forwards. And I'm going to name some of those guys. He didn't play in that golden age of power forwards, but I never got to see him go against a Garnett, a Duncan, a Dirk, or even like a Chris Webber. But Anthony Davis, who he is, he's my age, so I've really studied Anthony Davis and watched him close from a young age, in high school and things like that. Generational stuff, man. What he did in the 2020 finals won't be talked about enough for some reason. Maybe it's the bubble. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because he didn't have the finals MVP, but a nightmare, man. And that was like a journey that he went on. Like in Pelicans years, he was putting up 55 and 25. First of all, look at the numbers. Look at the peak numbers that he put up. And then look at the ability. I think he has the most skill set probably. If you were to just take a guy to a gym by themselves and work him out, he's probably the most diverse and versatile offensively in terms of his game at the power forward position. Because I don't think Garnett's the other one, but I don't think Garnett could go out to the wing and look like a small forward at times. Garnett could do it. Garnett did it all, but like Anthony Davis was a little sped up. Anthony Davis was a little more fluid and smooth with everything. Not putting him above Garnett at all or Duncan, but he's right behind him, Dirk, and Duncan, Garnett, and Dirk, I think, is the best power forwards to ever play the sport. A freak of nature with all the skills. Come on. Paul Pierce, a three-level scorer, a polished assassin, another evolution of the wing, but he had old school game and he paired it with new school skill, new school swagger, new school approach, and not, early on, Paul Pierce was actually really athletic, jumping out the gym. The way his footwork was impeccable. He was strong, the way he used his body and the way he knew how to score the ball, shot making and things like that. A legend and one of the best to do it. I think his resume is the one thing that got him into the second group right here. To beat Kobe Bryant, beat LeBron James. Who can say that I beat LeBron and Kobe in the playoffs, repeated like in the same year, and at their peaks? Like that's just shit. That's just legendary shit. You can say whatever you want about Paul Pierce. You go look up the footage, look up the resume, look at the stats, and then just look at what he did to the best of the best. He cooked Mount Rushmore. That's fucked up. That means everything. Moses Malone, man. Moses Malone, had to put him on here. I didn't see Moses Malone play like that, but I'm looking at Moses Malone's resume. Then I look at Moses Malone's highlight. I look at Moses Malone, who he was as a rebounder, who he was as a defender, who he was as an offensive player, an absolute beast in a time period where, he looked like a man among boys on some nights. And those Sixers years, he's as decorated as he is, but that production and that resume is undeniable, but also the era he did it in is very respectful and respectable, and he pushed the game forward. One of the best bigs to ever play the game. Rest in peace, Moses Malone. Dr. J, Julius Erving, a guy that was ahead of his time, but a guy that would go to Rucker, show out, guy that would go to ABA, show out, put on a show, a guy in the NBA, put on a show. When you think about talent, when you think about electricity, when you think about, those things, and you think about athleticism and things like that, you think about Dr. J, you think about Julius Erving, you think about finesse and showmanship at the rim, his finishing ability, his ability to hang and glide in the air. Who wasn't inspired by Dr. J? Dr. J is one of the first names you hear of when you look at basketball and you're coming up as a kid. To this day, Dr. J, and rightfully so, because he had it. He was a generational. He was a gift to the game. He was a guy that was way ahead of his time. He was a guy that would have still been good today in today's game. And physically speaking, what a performer. What a talent. Much respect to him, and a great resume and a long career and a decorated career and a diverse career. Went everywhere and did good. Next guy I got on here, Gary Payton. Gary Payton, the glove, the best guard defender we've ever seen. I think Gary Payton, when I think of Gary Payton, I think of the guy that he didn't shut him down, but he was able to hold Michael Jordan like 22, 23 a game. Seattle Sonics, years, very, very elite at what he did. Also a good offensive player. He could shoot the ball, he could pass the ball, he could finish. Came out of Oakland, he had that element to his game. He was one of the original guys that had that, I'm from the street game, I'm from the inner cities. Like, this is my life. Like, I'm gonna go grind for what I gotta get. And you saw it in every moment of the basketball court that he played. He was an absolute dog. Next guy I got on here, man, my guy, man, Gilbert Arenas. Gilbert Arenas was so fucking good. The talent at his peak, the ability at his peak. He should be closer to the top 25 group here. That's how good the ability was, but he got hurt. People think it was the gun incident that brought him out of the league. No, no, no. Gerald Wallace fell on his knee, and it cracked his knee, and it fucking in '07, that was it. And his game wasn't the same again. But the 3-year run that Gilbert saw is one of the best point guards to play the game. Everything that a Steph and Dame do now, Gilbert did it first. Everything that a Kyrie, not a Kyrie, is different, but Dame and Steph pulling up from deep. All the things you see guards do now, Gilbert was doing that when it wasn't cool. Another guy that was a rebel. He had incredible athleticism. I think he ran track when he was in high school. And then he had this, incredible basketball skill set. Just a bull going on the hoop, could play in the post, could move without the ball, shoot the ball with range. Ridiculous first step, but body control, and skill. An elite finisher, and then the ability to just in attack mode all game, put up 40, put up 50, put up 60 against Kobe. The guards that he did it against, like, that's what blows me away. D Wade, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, all in my top 25 at their peaks. Gilbert had multiple nights where he outshined them. And that means everything to me. From an individual talent standpoint, this guy right here in that 3-year run is one of the best point guards to ever live. And, put it like this, if you bring him to today's game, you give him the right situation and he starts winning, he could be looked at as the best point guard in the game. If you brought that Pete Gilbert to today's game, absolute dog. Hate that he got hurt, but he had a 5-year run. If you really go look at the numbers and the awards, he had a 5-year run. Go look it up. Then go watch the footage, more importantly. And next guy I got on here, Chris Webber. Chris Webber was a guy that put up Duncan and Garnett type numbers, similar production for like a 8 to 10 year span. And man, those Kings never won a chip, but he was right there. And I'm so happy he went into the Hall of Fame. Shooting ability, that scoring touch, but the passing ability, man. You see Jokic now. Chris Webber had that then too. Chris Webber had the ability to run the floor. He was ahead of his time. He evolved the position. He was able to step out and dance on you a little bit and break you down from the wing. And he was a guy that pushed the game forward and evolved the game. A bully as well. Chris Webber had it all, man. And Chris Webber, if you look at everything that he's done, he should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. He's high up here for me, man. I wish he won a ring. He came close a few times. But, again, another thing with situations, there was just better teams with better players and better talent all at once, and they just couldn't get over the edge. And a couple times it was with the officials too, right? Next guy, John Stockton, a top 5 pure point guard to play the game, the longevity that he had, the playmaking ability that he had, textbook, in the pick and roll with Karl Malone, what they did, a legendary run in Utah. He was a master at what he did. He was a master in the way the game was played then. And, there's a reason they took Jordan to those limits that they did. John Stockton is one half of that reason, much respect to him. Great player, great all-time player, great point guard, one of the greatest to ever do it. But the run is just incredible. The resume and the numbers are undeniable, and the records. Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard should have been on the NBA's top 75 as a lock. But again, they wanted to be nice to the veterans. They wanted to be nice to the pioneers. And, he's a guy that took the hit for that. Dwight Howard is the modern day freak of nature. You look at the game. They say Wilt was this and that. I wonder what he would have done to a guy like Dwight. Dwight Howard was like David Robinson with explosiveness in terms of physical specimen. Dwight Howard had a 40-inch vert, close to 40-inch vert. Dwight Howard was coming straight out of Atlanta, Georgia, out of the South, with that farmer strength and just workhorse, blue collar. I know Dwight Howard well. We did a mini doc on Dwight years ago. One of the hardest workers in the league that it's not talked about enough, but you see why he's still here. You see why he's still able to move around and survive. But, in elite shape, a freak in nature, physically imposing. And then you look at the resume, you look at the defensive player of the year, Dwight Howard's highlight reel. Dwight Howard at his peak as a leader, took a team to the finals, but more than anything, his defensive presence, how he made LeBron stay out of the paint, Wade stay out of the paint. Kobe had to adjust his shot, like Dwight Howard is a modern day Goliath type physical specimen, and he had basketball mind. And, it just came easy to him, but the dude worked so fucking hard, man. Much respect to him. One of the greatest that ever did it. Possibly could have been top 25, man, if shit lined up championship wise. The game changed on him too. He was dominant. Speaking of dominant, Amare Stoudemire. Amare Stoudemire is a lock right here. I got Amare Stoudemire on this list because Amare Stoudemire had the numbers. Amare Stoudemire had the accolades. Amare Stoudemire at his peak in the golden age of power forwards was a monster that they could not stop. He did whatever he wanted. He would put up 44 and 18 on you. And, the Suns came close to a few championship moments. And Robert Horry might have fucked that up a few times. That one time. Amare at his peak was a problem, and everyone knows who he was. Watch how quick he was coming out of high school. Watch how explosive he was. Watch him in the pick and roll with Steve Nash, and how he was able to do so much and be such a problem to guard. You just couldn't do anything with him, right? And he ran the floor and shit like that. Physical specimen, skilled, just a dog and just a force and a freak of nature. Generational type stuff, evolution type stuff right here. Modern day, just beast. Quick first step, 2 out of triple threat, man. Ridiculously quick first step. Next one, Dominique Wilkins. Dominique Wilkins to me was at moments, I look at the tape and I look back on the numbers and the stats. But the eye test especially might have been the second best wing in Jordan's time. You never got to honor that because they never won. But Dominique was a guy that put up 50, he got buckets, put up 30, and had 60-point game. Like, that's the height of everything, But Dominique Wilkins pushed the game forward. He was the evolution of the game too, because, he and Jordan were the guys that were human highlight reels, but they were gliding in the air, flying in the air, hanging in the air. And then they also had this skill level and this footwork and shooting ability, right? Dominique had that. Obviously not on Jordan's level, but he was the other guy that I feel like had it. Penny would have panned out. And then this next guy right here, fuck, man, another guy that got hurt, but Grant Hill at his peak is a top 75 to ever step foot on the basketball court. Another guy that was supposed to rival Jordan, quick first step, slashing ability, the modern day wing, guard and lead forward, running your offense, playing making, shooting, getting to the cup, getting over the rim, playing above the rim, dunking on your big, nasty skill set. He had it all. Great all-around player. In his time period, you could kind of compare him to a guy like, not obviously on that level, but he played the game and approached the game similarly to a LeBron James. It's just injuries took a toll on him, but even the resume, the numbers, the accolades, it's phenomenal. And I'm glad he made the Hall of Fame. He deserved that. It would have been crazy if he stayed healthy. I think Jordan would have had a rival in Grant Hill. Next guy I got on here, Nikola Jokic. Nothing needs to explain. You already know, best passing big man in the game, MVP in his time. He's an evolution of the game too. Came from Serbia and showed us what it's like when you just rep out the game all day, play the game all day. Work on your game all day, work on your craft all day, and high basketball IQ, incredible feel for the game, and just a great mind for the game, and it comes so easy to him. The Nuggets, I think, have a chance to win a championship still with him at the center position, running the offense through him. He for sure is one of the best bigs to ever play the game. Top 50 I've seen, top 50 talent I've seen. Next guy I got on here is his peer, Joel Embiid. Shout out to him. These two are the two best probably traditional bigs in the game to me. On the fact that Joel is a product of Hakeem. Joel is a product of Hakeem Olajuwon, those guys. But the other night, last week, I saw him hit a fucking fadeaway turnaround, swish it at the buzzer over two Bulls players. And I'm like, look what the game has become, man. Like, what are people watching? Imagine showing someone this footage 30, 40 years ago. They'd be blown away. Joel has that. Joel is a guy that, can go on the low block. He's a guy that I wish played in the 90s with those other bigs, the golden age of bigs. And it would have been crazy to see what he does at that level with those guys. But, a force and skilled and physically imposing. Let's see how the Sixers can go, how far the Sixers can go with him if he can stay healthy. But decorated everything. He's already done it all outside of like win and things like that. Next guy I got on here. It's the next two I'm going to name them together. Jason Kidd and Steve Nash. I'll never forget when I asked Iverson, I said, who's the toughest to guard? He said it was Steve Nash. I didn't know what the fuck he was going to do. Also, on top of that, he wouldn't stop running. He was just constantly in attack mode, but he didn't know what he was going to do, and he would never get tired. Jason Kidd, probably the greatest passer of his time. These two guys were pure points in that age. They sped the game up. They changed the game. They made it cool to be a playmaking point guard. They made it cool to, they brought this they brought this hip hop to their game. They brought this nastiness to their game on top of, like a John Stockton. They made it a little bit more flashy. They made it a little bit more cool to be a pure point and make those plays. And they inspired a lot of guys, and these are two of the best that ever did it, two Hall of Fame point guards. Their talent level was through the roof. Steve Nash never got that chip, but Jason Kidd, the moment he got the situation, did. And I'm sure Steve Nash would have too, but individually, talent-wise, accolades-wise, stat-wise, eye test-wise, incredible. And I'll never forget this duel they had. I think it was back in 2007. Nash and Kidd went at it, man. It's one of the greatest games I've ever watched. Go check it out. Next guy, Ray Allen, man. Ray Allen was more than a shooter. Ray Allen was more than the Game 6 game winner, clutch shot against the Spurs, or, Ray Allen was more than the champion that you saw in Boston. Those were like the final years and the cherry on top of one of the great careers and the great talents in the game. All-around player when he came in out of Milwaukee. He could put up 40 and 50. Textbook, he could do it all. Defend your best player, play above the rim, be in the mid-range, move without the ball, just a marksman. And then the best shooter that we saw in that time period before Curry came in, and right, Klay. But, again, a top 3 shooter that I've ever seen, but a pure scorer as well, I think Ray Allen must have got disrespected when they used to call him a shooter because he was a pure scorer. And look at his peers, man. Look at the guards that he was playing up against, Kobe and T-Mac and AI and Vince and those guys. And Ray Allen always held his own, man. Much respect to him. Next guy, Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose, again, another guy. If you want to show someone the evolution of the game, I'm going to name these two together, Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook. If you want to show some of the evolution of the game, show them these two. Show them footage of what these guys are doing now and compare it to the 60s and 70s. Freaks of nature, came from that, AAU scene, the explosion on the high school scene that happened, products of just like straight up athletic. You're looking at two of the nastiest talents in the history of the game. They were an extension of what Marbury, Baron Davis, and Steve Francis were. And then they put it together and they won. They had accolades. They were MVPs in the league. That's what Steve Francis, Stephon Marbury, and Baron Davis are. Cranked up a little bit, speed it up a little bit, make them jump higher a little bit, give them a little bit more skill, and then give them the situation. And that's what you get. Freaks of nature, man. The evolution just kept going on, man. Look at that. Derrick Rose, I hate that he got hurt. I think he could have been top 25. Love that he's still here, though. It's just that the casual narrative just fucked up his prime. Like, people just didn't believe in him for 5 years. What he's doing now in New York, he might have just done in 2015, 16, 17. But people were so busy doing some other shit, whatever. Chris Paul, again, another top 5 pure point guard to play the game. Him, Nash, Kidd, Stockton are locks in that. CP3, when he came out in the league, man, such a mature guard. So just smart with the game, quick as shit. Skilled and supremely skilled, smarts for the game. Still here, still to this day, is dominating, playing his game and controlling the game. The point guard, that's why they call him that. He's a lock. Next guy I got Dame Lillard. Dame Lillard, man. The heart, the will, the skill, the passion, the work ethic, the grind that he's gone through, the journey he's been on. I was so happy when he's named the NBA 75 because he deserves that shit, man. We haven't seen anything quite like this. You want to see peak Dame? Go watch 55 last year in the playoffs, man. That's video game type stuff. Again, something you show from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they say this is not human. This is like fucking some other shit that you showed us, right? He looked like an alien. And Dame is that. Dame is a guy that worked his ass off, came out of Weber State, grinded his way to the top, grinded his way to the league, barely got in to college, and look what he's made it, man. 40s, 50s, 60s, the body of work, the stats, and just who he is as an individual talent. I think I put him right there with the guys in the next 25. It's just that I couldn't give him the nod because those guys have certain accolades that make it hard to get into that group. But Dame Lillard on a point guard level, from a scoring point guard standpoint, is a top 5 scoring point guard we've ever seen. That's what Gilbert probably would have been if he was healthy. And these are some of the best to ever do it. They have a little bit of what Kobe had and AI had, just killers. Next guy, Vince Carter. Vince Carter, again, another guy that could have been top 25, but fuck, what do you say? You want to look at the evolution of the game. You want to look at what a product of Michael Jordan is that 48-inch vert, showmanship, athleticism, shot making skill, had everything that a Kobe and a Jordan had, just never put it together all the way to where it was celebrated on a winning level. Naturally, he was just such a talent. Naturally, he was such a force. He was such a phenomenal, performer. One of the best we've ever seen in the most advanced era. If I think of advanced basketball and evolution of the game, I think of Vince Carter. These are monsters like you're looking at. Monsters that we'll probably never see again. We got guys like Zach LaVine doing that now, but like Vince Carter did it for 7, 8 years, 9 years as a lead guy and had one hell of a long career. He's a lock. I might even think that for some nights, I always think was Vince top 25. It's just the resume never completed the picture, but the eye test was out of the world. He could box with anyone on his best day, anyone ever, and they'd respect him. Go read what Kobe said about Vince and Mamba mentality. Next guy, Charles Barkley, man. Charles Barkley, undersized at his position, but overachieved so much because of his heart, his hustle, his passion, his skill, and his mind for the game. He was a dog. He was a beast on the boards. In his time, he was an MVP, decorated, put up numbers. Did the game. He was a natural basketball player. He could eat a pizza and come out and put 50 up on you. I don't know where he fit in today, but what he did in his time is undeniable. And, just played so fucking hard, man, every single night. I just appreciate that guy's toughness and just his grit and his skill level. He had it all. Patrick Ewing. What an enforcer. What a force down low on the block. He was a finger roll away from the finals, man, and it probably eats him up to this day, but he was a game changer. Came out of Georgetown, did so much, such a just dominant presence down low on the block. In the golden age of bigs, he was one of the best bigs. He had footwork, he had skills. He could even handle a little bit, but back to the basket on the block, he was such a monster, man. How do you stop him? How do you even get around him? How do you even push him and bump with a guy like that? On top of that, he had a skill level and a scoring touch and just this, chemistry with the fucking rim and his teammates. And it was just like a guy that really took over the game from the low block. One of the best players to never win a championship, but an absolute force. The next guy I got on here, he's the final guy on this list, Paul George. Paul George, to me, some days I wonder, is he a top 25 talent just on eye test? It's the resume and shit that doesn't get him in because the next resumes are just insane. But Paul George, man, fuck. What do you say? Smooth, 6'8", 6'9", handles the ball, playmaking. I'm glad that the people are realizing, and everything I tell you, realize, put the offense in his hands, put the ball in his hands. This is one of the best wings of our time. Kind of like an extension of a T-Mac because he had a longer run. But, just such a fucking... All right, man, my top 25. This is easy. These guys' resumes were undeniable. But some of these guys that a casual fan or an everyday media person in the NBA that may not think, oh, what the fuck is he doing here? Or the impact geeks, that think everything's about what your team did, not understand what this list is about. Individual talents and brilliance. That's what we're celebrating. First off, I want to kick it off right away, right now. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the greatest basketball resume probably ever, start to finish, if you include college, high school, all those things. Skyhook, the skill level, the patience that he had. These guys played a different type of game. They had this touch, this supreme, just like grace to their game, and just this fucking, mastery that they played the game with, and he did what he did in his time. He would have done that in other eras as well. I would have loved to see him play in the golden age of bigs, but it would have been crazy to see, incredible talent. Giannis enters this group this year for me because on the fact that the resume is undeniable. And then you take him, another guy that you want to show some of the evolution of the game, show him Giannis at that size. Garnett and Duncan couldn't move like that, and they weren't freakishly athletic like that. Doesn't have the skill that they have, but the resume is on pace to be there potentially one day. And, defensive player of the year, MVP, how do I deny that, right? And then on top of that, you got a guy that did it in this age, advanced age. He's a modern day freak of nature. And you look at this guy and you see everything that I'm talking about when I say advanced specimens in the history of the game. We're in a crazy video game type era. It's because of guys like this. Next one, Zeke, Isaiah Thomas. He was the originator. He was the original before the AIs, before the Marburys, the Derrick Rose and the Steve Francis and these guys. It was him. He was the guy that created that style and that flair. He brought it from Chicago and played the game with a chip on his shoulder and passion and heart and just so much skill. He had this slithery skill set, slippery, hard to catch, nasty ball handling ability, natural playmaking ability, shot making ability, mid-range ability, finishing ability, kept coming at your chest. Won at the highest level. Who else could say I beat the GOAT repeatedly? Not many people. He says it. I don't blame him either, man. He's got all that. Kawhi Leonard, Kawhi Leonard entered this group for me this year because I think he took this shit to another level, with his work ethic, became a 3-level scorer, became a guy that is strong, hard to guard, and, just very, very physically imposing on both ends of the court. And then he got buckets at the highest level on the highest stages in basketball, man. What do you say? It's hard to deny that. You look at Kawhi Leonard. You want me to ask me the evolution of the game? You look at Kawhi Leonard. That's the evolution of the game. Again, another product of Michael Jordan, right? The greatest player that ever lived. Next name we got on here, I'm going to put these two together, Shaq and Wilt, the two most dominant players in the history of the sport. Wilt, we don't have footage of like that, although we did just see that HD footage, which was crazy, right? Wilt and Shaq are the two most dominant that I've ever, heard of and seen. Obviously, I didn't see Wilt. Shaq for sure. Just we won't see that shit again. We won't see that again. I'm convinced we won't see that again. God-given ability physically, and then they paired it with their basketball mind and skill, and you had incredible resumes and numbers. Just pure destruction and dominance, man. James Harden, a unique game-changing talent. You could say what you want. Some people don't like his game. Some people do. I call him a pure hooper. At the end of the day, that's a guy that dominated this game for a decade now, with pure skill, and just craft. And as a lefty, at 6'5", hard to guard, blows by you at his peak. I hate that he's kind of losing his quick twitch and his blow by right now, but I mean, he's still so elite. This is James Harden at his worst, and look what he's doing: 18, 11, and 11 and shit like that. A pure point while being a pure scorer. 6'5", hard to guard, blows by you, plays at the rim, physical, knows how to get to the line, shot making, then the resume, then the stats, the body of work. Come on, easy. He's a lock. David Robinson, an MVP, a guy that put up 70 in a game, a guy as a lefty that was so hard to guard as well, quick and agile and mobile and strong, and, very happy that he got that championship. That completed one of the greatest careers in basketball. He came out of the Navy, I think it was, and just, took the league by storm, and just such a dominant force, but he had this skill level, man. And I think he could have played today pretty easily, because he could step outside and shoot that. Elbow jumper was money. Baseline jumper was money. He probably would have been able to easily adapt and pick up on a 3-point shot as well. But a guy that would dominate any era before him and play in today's era if you bought him here. Karl Malone, incredible resume, incredible stats, played the game, dominated the game on the low block. In the golden age of bigs, he was probably the best big for a moment, and an MVP in Jordan's time. Who took MVPs from the GOAT? That means something, easy lock, always will be. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird locks. They were the leaders of the evolution of the game. Not only did they save the NBA, they made the NBA really cool, and they made kids want to pick up a ball. Larry was a pure bucket getter. Larry wanted you to go get buckets. I don't know how these guys would do in today's game. I don't know if there's probably guys in the 26 to 51 that had more ability, but what these guys did from a resume standpoint, statistical standpoint, and what their impact was on the game and who they were and who they are to the culture and what they mean to the game, man. You got to have them here. Who knows where we are without a Larry? Who knows where we are without a Magic, right? Those guys were looked at as the perfectionists of their craft and the masters of their specific craft. Magic is a pure point, is running the show. Larry is a bucket-getting wing. You got to have him here, man. Skill level was out the roof, though. Dirk Nowitzki, I think, is the most disrespected and overlooked, all-time talent. I have him, if I were to rank this shit, probably close to my top 15. What Dirk did, the time he did it, they're still trying to replicate Dirk, but they can't. Another part of the evolution of the game. Who the hell we ever thought we'd see a near 7-footer step it out like that? And just be so skilled, and it comes so natural to him. And he has such a good natural feel for the game. High arcing jumper, the footwork, the shot making ability that he had. And just the soft label, he shook it off. He was tough, and on the grandest stages in basketball, man, he competed in the golden age of power forwards. I think he's right behind Duncan and Garnett. Um, and he's one of the best that ever did it. He's one of the most unique that ever did it. We won't ever see another Dirk Nowitzki quite like that again, probably. An MVP and a champion. What more do you say, right? The greatest finals run probably of this modern generation, or this my era that I saw post 2010, at least, that we all saw, that we can all agree we saw. Like, that's Dirk. What he did that year in 2011. Fuck, I'll never forget that. Next two guys, I kind of leaked it anyways now with this. Duncan and Garnett. I think Duncan is the greatest power forward ever. I think Garnett is the best power forward ever. Best meaning ability. Best meaning I could guard your wing. I could guard the low block. I could board. I could grab rebounds. I could run the floor. I could step outside with it, handle the ball. I could play on the block. I could do it all. I could block shots. Go look up Garnett in that Team USA footage. If you want to look at talent, if you want to look at ability, go look at that. Playing one-on-one with Vince, playing one-on-one with J Kidd, playing one-on-one with, I think it was Grant Hill, guys like that. Just next level shit. And then Duncan, to do what he did, pure excellence. The big fundamental. Tim Duncan down low on the block. Tim Duncan controlling the paint, his patience, his timing, his gravity, his dominance, and his dynasty, leading way. Like, it was just nuts, two of the best at that position, period. I don't think the game is played like that anymore, but if that is, those the two guys I would look to, and idolize, and they do. Next up is a guy named LeBron James. I think LeBron James right now, if it were to end tonight or tomorrow, and he were to retire, I would call him the third best basketball player I've ever seen, behind Kobe and Michael. But LeBron, come on, man. What do you say about LeBron, dog? This is a Mount Rushmore talent. This is a guy that exceeded all expectations. This is a guy that, if you put him in any other era, he gets better and better. A freak in nature that had skill, a freak in nature that had a mind for the game, a freak in nature that took, all the tools and resources he had and maximized it. If you want to look at evolution of the game, look at LeBron James. If you want to look at the face of the evolution of the game, look at LeBron James. And he's a GOAT in his own right, just like a lot of these guys are. But the run that he's had, the numbers that he's put up, the accolades he has, paired with the eye test, we've never seen anything quite like this, and we probably never ever will again. So much respect to him. D Wade, what do you say, dog? D Wade, people forget what D Wade was, because at his peak, he started sacrificing, and he sacrificed to allow that Heat team to win championships. But Dwyane Wade, as what he could do to a defense, carve up a defense, the way he could break down a defense, the way he could play above the rim. Another guy that I look at when I look at the evolution of the game, it's scary what Dwyane Wade was at his peak. As a shot maker, as a ball handler, as a defender, as a closer, in a terms of dominating a game, he could do so much and do it in so many different ways. A problem. In a modern day athlete, just genetically gifted, trained, took that shit to new heights, skill, everything got put together, and you had one of the greatest to ever do it, on both ends. Just absolute dog, and such a joy to watch him. We're so lucky to have witnessed Dwyane Wade. Another guy we're very lucky to have witnessed, Kevin Durant. Generational type stuff. I think he has a chance to be in that convo with LeBron, Kobe, and Michael when it's all said and done. The abilities out the world, the talent level that we've seen, we're never going to see this type of player again. A gift to the game, a pure hooper, an absolute master of his craft. Just enjoy what he's doing, dog. And next up, we got Kyrie Irving. In my mind, is the most skilled point guard to ever play the game. The things he does with the basketball, it's like Kobe Bryant mini, 6'2", 6'3" Kobe. Footwork, one-on-one, isolation mastery, won a championship. Never forget, Kyrie Irving is an NBA champion. Kyrie Irving, if you go watch the 2016 NBA Finals, that is one of the greatest and most brilliant performances in NBA history, what he did in 16. Make a 3-1 comeback with them. It was just phenomenal shit, man. Much respect to that guy. Hope to see him back out there soon. He's easy top 25 that I've ever seen. And you could ask his peers and the guys that had to guard him. They all say it anyways. Another guy that if you ask his peers who he was, a bully, Carmelo Anthony, one of the greatest to ever do it, one of the top 5 pure scorers I've seen, an unstoppable force, an unstoppable physical specimen that had all the skill in the world. You want to see the evolution of the wing? Go look at Carmelo Anthony. Twice the size of the small forwards you saw in the 70s, 80s. 2 times quicker, and then 2 times more skilled, and everything's just happening so quick. It's a peak level of basketball. He's a bully. He could take you on the block. Face-up game, mid-post game, the jab series, and just the things that he could do with the basketball and the shot making, the jumper, the purest jumper that I've ever seen. Shot is wet. You could hear the fucking net in the arena, and it was just, hey, yo, come on, man. Carmelo Anthony, I'm going to keep talking about him because he's one of the best to do it. He's absolutely top 25. Just put on YouTube and watch the footage. Fuck all the other shit. You can look at the resume and stats if you want to. Decorated, and he's a winner. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player that ever lived. Thank you, Michael Jordan. This list wouldn't be possible without you. Michael Jordan is who all these guys are a product of Michael Jordan. He created the evolution. God put him here and said, push the game forward. He was 35 years ahead of his time. You put him now, he's still the best player in the league. Still the best athlete in the league. Michael Jordan, the ultimate, the GOAT, the guy, the originator, the guy that gave us this game and made it what it was, and took what he saw from the David Thompsons and the Elgin Baylors and the Jerry West, and took it to God tier levels and freakish levels. Don't gotta say much about Michael Jordan. He is basketball. Stephen Curry, the greatest shooter we've ever seen. And look, I'm gonna tell you this right now, dog. If the Warriors win this chip, this guy's gonna get to the point where, you remember how when Kobe won his 4th in Orlando, it's getting to that point. A master of his craft, pure love and dedication to the game got him here. Pure reps and just studying the game and just really being a student of the game and just being humble and just being, a silent assassin and a killer and a laid back, cool and chilly, competitor, man, and doing it in a way with such class and perfection and just such, discipline, and a pro's pro. One of the best ball handlers we've seen, one of the best shot makers we've seen, the best shooter we've ever seen, an elite finisher, and a guy that maximized his physical tools, maximized what he was given through hard work and dedication. Steph Curry was never supposed to be as good as he was. Steph Curry was never supposed to be on this list, but Steph Curry put in the work, and he made sure he's at the top or near the top of this list, and he will be forever. But I think this story's not ending, and I'm seeing this guy, and I just see a gifted basketball player, and I see a gifted athlete and a mind for the game, and I love to see it. One of my favorites to watch. Tracy McGrady. The casuals are flipping out. Oh my God, he overrated Tracy McGrady. No, I didn't. I named Michael Jordan. I named LeBron James. I named Kevin Durant so far. I'm going to name the best player I've ever seen. Let's just put it this way. And Carmelo Anthony. Those are the most monster talents in the history of the game. On their best day, if you brought them on their best day and you brought Tracy McGrady on his best day to a basketball court and you gave everyone an even playing field and you gave everyone an even situation and an even team, there is a chance Tracy McGrady walks out as the top dog. And he would do it fresh out of bed in fucking sweatpants and on no breakfast. A natural talent, had that just flow and swagger and rhythm and shot making and ball handling, and he inspired the KDs. He had that handle, the originator, the pure scorer, the purest, the talent, the defense, the athleticism, all those things put together, man. Everything I ever speak on T-Mac is that at his peak. Never had the situation, got hurt, but at his absolute apex was in a conversation. And I love it because back then you didn't go by, oh, how many rings does a guy have? You did the eye test then, because the only people that really love basketball watched it this time. The conversation was who's the best in the game, Kobe or T-Mac. And that means everything. And T-Mac is a god-tier talent in terms of his ability and arsenal. Next one, Allen Iverson, my favorite player of all time. A guy I had the honor of interviewing and really, bringing on in this movement and he was one of the lead guys, the first guys. And it was such a blessing. But no, listen, the pound for pound, the greatest player we've ever seen, the best little guard we've ever seen. Every single guard that I named here that was from today's era is a product of Allen Iverson, the scoring point guard. Made it cool for the small guy who averaged 30. We'll never see that again. I think to this day he's the third best guard I've ever seen. Different conversation. Look at the numbers, look at the resume, look at the run, look at what he did in 900 games, look at what he did in the minutes he played through the injuries and pain and all that, what he means to the game, where he came from, the athleticism, the skill, the heart, the fire that he played with every single night. We'll never see it again. The artistry and the creativity, man. generational stuff, man. A true gift to the game, and a true game changer. One of the nastiest talents we've ever seen. To this day, if I put him, all these guys that I named, Steph, Curry, Dame, D Rose, Russ, Francis, Barron, Isaiah, Iverson to me is the best, man. You could call me biased, but I think if you put those guys in front of this Iverson at his peak, they ain't doing shit with him. They ain't doing shit to him. Unless Derrick Rose healthy, he could really box with him, but like physically because of that. But fuck, Iverson at his peak, man. I think he's the third best guard ever. Hakeem Olajuwon, I think, is the best center to ever play the game, the best big man to play the game, the best, in terms of his skill level, in terms of his footwork, in terms of his touch, in terms of his shot making, in terms of who he was on the block defensively, offensively, was the best player in the game the moment Jordan left. He probably would have won more rings if there was no Michael Jordan there in that era. The best big that I've seen, the most skilled and the most dynamic big that I've ever seen, the true center position, the master of that position. I said this list not in order, and it's not, but there's a reason I put Kobe at the end. Kobe Bryant's the best basketball player that ever lived in my mind. I think he took what Michael Jordan did and he expanded on it. He added layers to it. He did it against tougher defenses. He expanded on it with his skills. He expanded on it with his work ethic. I think he equaled up his body close to that level. And then the skills he took to a whole different level through the work, constant work, obsession with the game, passion for the game. I miss him. I talk about his game every day to forget what happened. I hate that he was taken from us at a young age, abruptly. But I will continue to celebrate this man right here as the best player that ever played the game. And that's exactly what he was. And there's a lot of fucking players that saw this guy, and trust you me, there's a lot of guys that have come on the show and they will tell you, yes, you're correct when you say Kobe Bryant. And the players are the real experts. Kobe Bryant is the best basketball player that we've ever seen. That's my 75. And you look at this list, and I'm going to post this list properly. It's just straight talent. It's straight ability. I'm sorry I couldn't put Chauncey Billups on there. I'm sorry I couldn't put Bradley Beal on there, a Kyle Lowry, a Tim Hardaway. Bill Russell I left off out of respect. I don't know about Bill Russell like that. But Bill Russell, I don't want to rank him in shit because he means so much more to the game. Bill Russell means so much more to the culture and what he did to the game. It's beyond what he did on the court. And I left a few guys off. Ben Wallace maybe could have made it, but Dikembe made it over him. It was hard. It was hard doing this list. But you're looking at 75 pure talents. You want to talk about ability. This list is all ability at its peak. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we're going to have a lot of discussions about this, I'm sure.